All right, so today we're diving deep into something that's, well, it's pretty heavy stuff, but incredibly important. We're talking about depression, specifically among university students in Nigeria.
It is, yeah.
And we've gone through a bunch of articles, a lot of research actually, trying to really get to the core of, well, what's going on? Why is this such a big issue there?
Right.
What's the impact? And honestly, what can we even do about it?
Yeah, and there's so much to unpack, but we're going to try and keep it clear for you.
Exactly. No getting bogged down in the
Right.
weeds.
Just the essentials.
So, like, right off the bat, the big question, right? What's actually causing all this depression in Nigerian universities? And the sources, they kind of point to this whole bunch of pressures, like all piled on top of each other. I mean, one that I think a lot of people can probably relate to is academic pressure.
Yeah, and it's really intense when you look at it in the Nigerian context. We're talking about a system that's super competitive,
Yeah.
like constantly high stakes. Students feel this immense pressure to just keep performing, keep exceeding expectations. And it's not even just for themselves.
It's like the pressure's coming from everywhere, right?
Exactly.
Like family, peers, even just society as a whole.
Yeah, and the research really digs into this, how this weight of expectation, from all these different sources, it can lead to feeling inadequate, like you're not good enough.
Right, like you can't measure up.
Yeah, and then that can easily slide into this sense of hopelessness,
Right.
like what's the point? And then on top of that, you've got this whole other layer, which is financial strain.
Yeah, which I mean that's something I think a lot of people, especially students, can relate to.
Oh, absolutely. And when you consider the broader economic realities for a lot of families in Nigeria, it's another huge burden that these students are carrying.
Yeah.
Alongside the academic demands, they're also constantly stressed about being able to afford their tuition, accommodation, even just basic living expenses.
Yeah.
So that stress of, trying to secure the funds for their education, for their daily life,
Yeah.
that becomes another really significant pressure point.
It's like how are you supposed to focus on your studies when you're worried about how you're going to pay rent next month, you know?
Exactly.
And then, it's interesting because that financial pressure, it often gets tied up with those family expectations we were just talking about.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Right. Because there's often this really strong cultural emphasis on achieving academic excellence, and that often translates into specific career paths, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And these are often, highly regarded, prestigious paths. But it makes you think, what happens when your own interests or even just your natural talents, they don't align with what your family has in mind for you?
Mm-hmm.
That can be a real source of conflict,
Yeah, absolutely.
And that pressure can be really demoralizing for a student.
It's like, your own aspirations can feel secondary to what others have planned for you. And,
Yeah.
on top of all that, many students are going through this whole university experience while being away from home for the first time.
Right. Away from their familiar support systems, their family, their friends.
Yeah.
And the sources really highlight how this transition, it can lead to a lot of social isolation and a sense of loneliness.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're in a whole new environment. You're trying to make new friends, new connections. It can be really tough.
Yeah, I mean, you're figuring everything out on your own, basically.
Exactly. And without those familiar faces, without that support network you're used to, it definitely makes you more vulnerable to depression.
It's completely understandable, You're trying to find your footing academically, socially. You might be dealing with financial worries, the pressure of expectations, like all at the same time. And then if that wasn't enough, there's also this kind of looming sense of uncertainty about the future.
Yeah, particularly for students as they get closer to graduating.
Yeah.
And this is where the wider economic situation in Nigeria really comes into play. Because, job opportunities, they're often limited.
Right.
So it creates this feeling of hopelessness, like I'm working so hard, but what's even waiting for me after I graduate?
That feeling of just striving towards an unknown outcome, that must be really disheartening,
Absolutely.
And then on top of all that, there's this huge societal issue, which is the stigma around mental health.
Yeah, and this is such a critical point to understand.
Yeah.
Because this stigma, it prevents people from seeking help.
Mhm.
They're afraid of being judged. They don't want to be seen as weak or or somehow flawed.
Yeah, it's like admitting defeat or something, right?
Right. And so they keep it bottled up inside, and of course that just makes the depression worse.
It's a vicious cycle, isn't it?
Absolutely. And it's not just about feeling embarrassed, you know.
Yeah.
There's a genuine fear of being ostracized by your family,
Yeah.
judged by your community, you know, maybe even facing repercussions in your future career.
And then the sources also touch on, some more immediate things that students themselves might be doing that can actually make things worse.
Yeah, especially during those high pressure times like exams.
Yeah, like what are they talking about specifically?
Well, things like poor eating habits, not getting enough sleep, you know, not exercising.
Oh, okay, so just kind of neglecting their own like basic self-care, right?
Exactly. And when you're already stressed, when your body's not getting what it needs, it just makes you so much more susceptible to experiencing depression.
Right, so it's like all these factors are just like piling up and creating this perfect storm.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And then, in some regions there's this added layer of just physical insecurity.
Yeah, unfortunately, research does mention this. There are areas where political instability, conflicts, even criminal activity, they create real safety concerns for students.
So it's like a constant fear.
Yeah.
Right.
And sometimes even direct exposure to violence,
Yeah.
which of course leads to a lot of emotional distress.
I mean, that's a lot to deal with.
Absolutely.
So we've talked about all these things that contribute to depression, but, you know, what does that actually look like? What's the impact on students' lives?
Well, the consequences, they're pretty extensive. You know, it affects students individually, but also the university community as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
One of the most immediate impacts is academic decline.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Depression, it affects your ability to concentrate,
Mm-hmm.
your memory, even just your overall cognitive abilities. So it makes it incredibly difficult to do well in your courses, to complete assignments, even just to show up to class consistently.
Right, so it's affecting the very reason you're at university in the first place.
Exactly.
And it's not just the academic side of things, there's also a big social impact.
Oh, absolutely. Students who are struggling with depression, they often withdraw from social interactions.
Mm-hmm.
They isolate themselves, you know, from their friends, even their family. They lose interest in things they used to enjoy, like extracurricular activities, hobbies.
Right, and that social withdrawal, it might seem like a way to cope in the short term, but it actually makes things worse in the long run.
Exactly. It just intensifies those feelings of loneliness,
Yeah.
and that just feeds back into the depression.
Right. It's another one of those cycles.
It is.
And the sources also talk about how some students might try to cope with these feelings in unhealthy ways.
Yeah, there's a real risk of substance abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Some students might turn to alcohol, drugs, you know, other substances as a way to self-medicate.
Right, like to numb the pain or escape from how they're feeling.
Yeah. But of course, that just leads to a whole host of other problems.
Yeah, it's a dangerous path. And the
Yeah.
research doesn't shy away from the most severe potential consequences of depression.
That's right. Untreated severe depression, it can lead to self-harm.
Hmm.
And tragically, it can lead to suicidal thoughts and attempts.
That's really heavy.
It is. And
Yeah.
it just underscores how crucial it is to have effective mental health support systems in place.
Yeah, and to encourage early intervention.
Absolutely.
And it's important to remember that depression, it's not just something that exists in your mind, it can also manifest physically.
Right. You might experience persistent fatigue, headaches, digestive problems.
So it affects your whole being, doesn't it?
It does.
So, okay, we've talked about the causes, the impacts, the really serious consequences of depression, but what can be done about it? The research actually suggests a bunch of potential solutions, long-term strategies, things that could actually make a real difference.
Yeah.
What are some of the key takeaways there?
Well, I think a fundamental starting point is to increase mental health awareness and education within universities.
Okay, so like what does that look like in practice?
Well, it could involve, you know, proactive campaigns to reduce the stigma surrounding mental health,
Mm-hmm.
you know, educating students about the early warning signs of depression and making sure they know where to go to access support services.
Okay, so it's about creating a campus culture where it's okay to talk about mental health.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then beyond just awareness, there needs to be actual support available.
Right. So accessible and confidential counseling services, that's That's essential.
Mm-hmm.
Having well-resourced on-campus centers where students can get individual counseling, maybe participate in support groups.
Okay. And what about support from other students?
That's a huge part of it too. Peer support networks, they can be really valuable because sometimes it's less intimidating to talk to a fellow student than to a professional, especially if you're just starting to reach out for help.
Yeah, I mean, they've been there, they've maybe experienced similar things.
Exactly.
And then the research also points to the need for changes within the academic environment itself.
Yeah, because some of that pressure that we talked about, it comes from the academic system itself.
Mm-hmm.
So things like improving academic support, having more tutoring available, mentorship programs, maybe even looking at the grading systems and the frequency of exams.
Okay, so making it a little less high pressure.
Exactly. And then we can't forget about the financial strain that a lot of students are under.
Yeah, that's a huge factor.
It is. So expanding financial assistance programs, scholarships, grants, things like that, that can really help to alleviate some of that stress.
Right, because if you're not constantly worried about money, then you can focus more on your studies, on your well-being in general.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not just about specific programs and services. It's also about the overall campus environment.
Okay, so what does that mean?
Well, it means creating safe spaces
Yeah.
where students feel valued, respected, included,
Hmm.
you know, actively working to prevent discrimination, bullying, things like that.
Right, so it's about fostering a sense of belonging.
Exactly. And to do all of this effectively, collaboration is going to be key.
Okay.
Universities need to work with external mental health organizations
Hmm.
to bring in expertise, resources, maybe offer specialized workshops, things like that.
Okay, so it's not just the university doing it alone.
Right. And the government has a big role to play here too.
Okay, so what would that look like?
Well, they need to prioritize mental health within the education sector,
Hmm.
providing adequate funding for mental health programs in universities, supporting the training of qualified counselors.
Okay, so putting your money where their mouth is, basically.
Yeah, and enacting policies that promote student well-being.
Hmm. And some of the research also talks about like longer term strategies, things that could benefit future students.
Right.
Like one that I found really interesting was integrating mental health education into the curriculum.
Yeah, that's a really proactive approach. It's about equipping students with the knowledge and skills they need
Mhm.
to manage stress, to develop emotional intelligence.
Right. So it's not just waiting for problems to arise, it's giving them the tools to prevent them in the first place.
Exactly.
And then involving faculty and staff, that seems like another really important layer of support.
Oh, absolutely. Providing training for them to recognize the signs of depression in students, to know how to offer support or to make referrals to professionals.
Right. So it's like creating this network of people who are looking out for students.
Yeah, like a safety net.
Yeah. And then the research also talks about the value of extracurricular activities.
Hmm. Things like sports, arts, volunteering.
Mhm.
These activities, they can be a great way to build resilience, to manage stress,
Mhm.
and they also help students to feel more connected to the university community.
Right. Like they have something that they're passionate about outside of academics.
Exactly. And speaking of connecting, we also need to make sure that mental health professionals are regularly involved on campus.
Okay, so more than just having the counseling centers, it's about having them like integrated into the university life.
Yeah, maybe providing on-campus services, maybe doing routine mental health screenings.
Okay, so being proactive about identifying potential issues.
Exactly. And then there's also a lot of power in student-led initiatives.
Okay, so what does that look like?
Well, student tier networks, advocacy groups, things like that,
Mhm.
they can really help to reduce stigma from within the student community.
Right, because it's coming from their peers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then we can't ignore the impact of technology and social media.
Yeah, that's a big one.
It is. So universities need to educate students about healthy social media usage,
Hmm.
how to manage their digital well-being.
Right, because that can have a huge impact on mental health.
It can. And then going back to the role of the government, there's a real need for policy reform, specifically targeting mental health support in universities.
Okay, so what kind of policies are we talking about?
Well, policies that mandate the provision of mental health services,
Hmm.
policies that allocate dedicated funding.
Right, because those services cost money.
They do. And then finally, incorporating mindfulness and stress relief techniques into university life. That can be really beneficial.
Okay, so things like meditation, yoga, stuff like that.
Yeah. And also, things like improving campus security, creating quiet, relaxing spaces, promoting healthy lifestyle choices.
Right. So it's about creating this overall supportive environment.
Yeah.
And it's clear that addressing this issue, it requires a really broad effort. It's not just the university, it involves families, communities.
Absolutely. Encouraging open conversations about mental health within families. That's so important.
Hmm.
And then community support programs, mentoring programs, support groups, even engagement with religious organizations. These can all provide additional support networks for students.
So it's about creating this whole ecosystem of support.
Yeah.
And the research really emphasizes the importance of early intervention and prevention.
Right, because recognizing the signs of depression early on, that can make a huge difference.
Hmm. And what are some of the signs that people should be aware of?
Well, emotionally, persistent sadness, irritability, loss of interest in things you used to enjoy,
Hmm.
feeling guilty, feeling worthless, experiencing anxiety.
Okay, so those are kind of the internal feelings.
Yeah. And then there are also behavioral signs.
Yeah.
Withdrawing from social activities, grades starting to slip,
Hmm.
difficulty concentrating, changes in sleep patterns, maybe starting to use substances like alcohol or drugs.
Right. So those are things that other people might notice.
Exactly. And then finally, there are physical symptoms.
Okay.
Fatigue, aches and pains, changes in appetite, slowed movements, or speech.
So it's really important to be aware of all of these different signs.
It is.
Okay, so if we're going to build this comprehensive support structure, what are the essential building blocks?
Well, on-campus counseling centers, they're absolutely essential.
Hmm.
They need to be accessible, confidential, affordable.
Right, so that students feel comfortable going there.
Exactly. And then 247 crisis hotlines and emergency services.
Okay, so that's for when people are in acute crisis.
Right, when they need immediate help. And then peer support networks. We've talked about how valuable they can be.
Mhm.
Having trained student counselors who can offer support and help to destigmatize mental health.
Right, and then regular mental health awareness campaigns.
Hmm. Seminars, information,
Mm.
workshops, just to keep the conversation going.
Yeah, keep it in the forefront of people's minds.
Exactly. And then online resources and telemedicine, that can be really helpful, especially for students who might not feel comfortable seeking help in person.
Right, so it's about providing options.
It is.
And then finally, we have to address the stigma, that cultural and societal stigma around mental health.
Yeah, that's a big one. And it's going to require a multi-pronged approach.
Okay, so what are some of the prongs?
Well, public health campaigns, educational campaigns,
Yeah.
working with mental health professionals to really get the message out there
Hmm.
and encouraging families to talk about mental health more openly.
Yeah, because that's where a lot of the stigma starts, right?
It is. And then even engaging with religious institutions because they often have a lot of influence in communities.
Right. And then, of course, the role of the government, the policymakers.
Yeah, they need to step up. We need a national mental health policy that specifically addresses the needs of university students.
Hmm.
And that policy needs to be backed up with funding.
Right, because you can't have policies without the resources to actually implement them.
Exactly. And then we also need to make sure that we're investing in the training and certification of mental health professionals,
Hmm.
making sure that there are enough qualified people to provide support.
Yeah. And then finally, supporting research, so that we can better understand the issue and develop more effective solutions.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, we've covered a lot here. It's clear that depression among Nigerian university students it's a complex issue. There are so many factors involved.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
Academic pressure, financial strain,
Yeah.
family expectations, social isolation, the uncertainty about the future, the stigma. It's all intertwined.
Right, and it's leading to some really serious consequences.
Yeah,
But the good news is that there are things that can be done.
absolutely.
It's going to require a really comprehensive effort, from universities, from the government, from communities, from families.
And from the students themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everyone has a role to play in creating a more supportive environment.
And one of the key takeaways here is that early intervention and prevention are crucial.
Absolutely. The sooner we can identify and address mental health issues, the better the outcomes will be.
So, we've given you a lot to think about, but we want to leave you with a question.
Okay.
What do you think is the single most important step that could be taken to improve the mental well-being of university students?
Yeah, not just in Nigeria, but everywhere. What can we do, individually and collectively, to create a world where students feel supported, feel valued, feel empowered to take care of their mental health?
It's a big question, but it's an important one.
It is.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for listening.